GMGP, good morning, good people. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but y'all decided to wake up with us. You're sick. You're sick in the head. There's a lot of fantasy football shows out there, but I promise y'all, they not like us. Brock Bowers, you looked a little quicker than fast. What does that even mean? Redraft, Dynasty, best ball, high stakes, we got you covered. And that's MVS and Justin Watson with some of the dopest tools designed to help you cancel out the noise and dominate your leagues. If there's a white wide receiver named Antoine, sign me up. Maybe it's cultural. I don't know. In season or off season, rain, sleet, hail, and snow, comma, semicolon, period, next sentence, to bring you the most actionable and entertaining content on YouTube. You don't go buy the dip on the Titanic.
Quarterback that you love, D-Bro. One of the best values in fantasy football.
Prop bets with my man Jay Rich.
Is that yes! Let's go!
So wipe the crust out of your eye, get you a cup of coffee. It's time to wake y'all asses up. We're Ray
and Jay
in the morning.
My God.
How good is
Dude.
he? How good is he? Let's get it. GMGP. It is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. Y'all decided to wake y'all asses up with Ray and Jay. And we appreciate each and every eye, each and every ear, each and every stream, listen, view. Thank y'all for being in the damn building. Hump day. Jay Rich, Wednesday, baby. Got a lot to talk about. We got two Achilles. Two Achilles tears we got to get to with Christian McCaffrey. We will talk about the ACL tear, non-tear. Rashee Rice, what are we doing? And Davante Owens doing sit-ups in his driveway, requesting out of Las Vegas. We will talk about that and a lot of other stuff happening around the league, happening around the sports world. It's good to be here, man. What's up, Leo Scott, Marlon in the building, Garrison, Schmidt-Side said, let's go. About time you made one of these things live. I saw you in there. You ain't been here in a minute. Good to see you. What's up, Josh Jones? Marlon in the building. Patrick Price. I see Cash Me Out. Jeff Math. Robert Garrison. You know what it is, G. Hit that thumbs up button. Like the content. Subscribe to the channel. Y'all are up. Jay, I don't know if you saw the comments, man. The West Coast people were complaining about the start time. Said, man, it's too damn early. It's 5 a.m. on the West Coast. I said, man, y'all forgot the days when this show used to be live at 6 a.m. my time, and we used to go 5 days a week. But yeah, wake up and tap in with us. Jay Rich, how you doing this morning, baby?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, you're bringing up the days when we used to go at 6 a.m. Eastern.
6 a.m.
Then we moved it to 8 a.m. Eastern. Man. Now it's 9 a.m. Eastern.
Man.
One of these days, Ray, we're going to be big enough to be in that 10 a.m. window. But not quite there yet. But very thankful for the extra sleep I'm getting over the years.
Yeah, we got to grow. We got
very appreciative of that.
That time, man. You know, we went through a lot of different players, a lot of different things on Monday, the instant reaction following Week 4's NFL action. We've had some time to sit back, reflect, react, listen to other analysis. So this is what we like to do. Player takes on Wednesday, talk about some of the burning hot topic items around the league, around these players. So that's what we're going to do this show. We are definitely going to talk Davante Adams. We'll talk Christian McCaffrey, Rashee Rice. Got some young second-year players we're going to talk about as well. And I'm going to just say this. The man that's sitting to the left of me, to the right of you, left of you, right of me, he is, and I give him credit, the original OG Dontavian Wicks truther. Jay Rich has been on Dontavian Wicks much longer than anybody else, and we will talk about Wicks' season potentially being here as well. But we have a little bit of news, Jay, a little bit of news.
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. You know, some of it is news, some of it is, early reports, injury updates from Monday, just to make sure that people are fully updated on everything that's going on. So we will quickly get into that. For anyone who did miss the Friday show, Austin Ekeler was ruled out with concussion. He is going to be available this week. He told Washington Radio that he is on track to play. So if you were planning on starting Austin Ekeler or hoping to have him back this week, he should be available for you and your lineups. Mike McDaniel, after the debacle that happened on Monday night, and Ray, I don't even think we're going to talk much about that game because it was so bad. But Mike McDaniel said Tyler Huntley is going to be starting again in Week 5. But it is also reported by Adam Schefter there's a real possibility that Tua will be ready in Week 8 once he's eligible to come off of IR. So we know that if you have Tyreek Hill, if you have Jalen Waddle, if you have Devon Achane, you are desperately hoping that Tua comes back for Week 8 because this offense has looked absolutely horrible since he's been down. It's unthinkable to think that this offense in particular is so good with Tua and so bad with everybody else. Everyone gives so much credit to Mike McDaniel and the offense and the scheme. Okay, what's up?
What do you think, just seeing how bad things have fallen apart, your opinion on how teams should prioritize backup QBs? Regardless if you're drafting him to be the long-term starter for the future, or just he's a viable option to where if something happens to my Tua, to my Dak Prescott, all the other multi-million-dollar assets that we've invested in aren't going to waste. We can actually, it just seems like a position that teams should prioritize. I mean, you look at Indianapolis, and I know he's an old guy. There's no dynasty value. He's not going to get some mega contract extension. The same with Andy Dalton, but you've got veterans back there to where if something happens to the starter, the season doesn't fall apart. Jay, there was a stat that Miami is the only team in the NFL this year to not lead, I think, in a quarter after a game. They have not led one point. Yes, they're the only team. It's crazy.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
Yes. So what do you think about that with the backup QBs and some of these teams, and especially when you got fragile quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I think the big thing with Miami is that you look at them right now and you say, well, what was their plan coming into the season? And I think there is a real reality where they did believe Skylar Thompson could be the answer. It's not like he's a rookie. It's not like he's even a second-year player. This is his third season on the Dolphins. He started or played in what looks like 7 games his rookie year, and then he came in last year, late in the year, in the playoffs and played as well. So early in the year to play as well. So you look at what they did. They got rid of Mike White, which, for some people, that's maybe a little bit questionable because we've seen Mike White play at a decent level in the NFL. Maybe he didn't fit the offense as well. But when you draft Skylar Thompson, you develop him, you hope he can be that backup to Tua, and then he plays as poorly as he did. Maybe people who are scouts who, have watched Skylar Thompson play at Kansas State know that he's probably not the guy, but I think there is a world where they did believe he could be that. You don't necessarily have to go out and have a Joe Flacco on your team when you're the Colts. We saw what happened with Gardner Minshew last year and how they needed Flacco. So I think depending on your quarterback situation and your team, Tua finally playing a full season, you don't need to prioritize it to the Joe Flacco level, but maybe that teams should start prioritizing it a little bit more because you can see the success of Andy Dalton, of Joe Flacco when he starts. Like, it's crazy to think, like, we're going to do the ranking show on Friday for the receivers, how much higher Michael Pittman and Josh Downs are going to be in the rankings if Joe Flacco's starting at quarterback. And if A. Rich is starting, they're not even in the top 36. Like, there's no point of putting them in there because you know what the result's probably going to be for that game. But if you're Miami, I don't think they did the wrong thing because they also have to manage the cap. They got to figure out other positions. And having a third-year quarterback on the roster, he should be good enough to do okay for you should Tua get hurt. Hasn't worked out for them so far, but let's continue going down the line because we do have Thursday Night Football between the Bucs and Falcons, and I want to bring this to people's attention. Sterling Shepard, probably going to be the wide receiver 3 for the Bucs. He had 3 receptions for 51 yards on 5 targets this week. Jalen McMillan is still dealing with a hamstring injury, which he suffered on Friday, and Trey Palmer is in concussion protocol from Sunday. So both those players are probably not going to be playing on Thursday against the Atlanta Falcons. So Sterling Shepard could be the third option. So if you need a deep flex or you have a couple players on bye or some good players on bye, hey, 3 for 50 is actually not that bad when you think about it from a flex, a guy who's probably on waivers, available, etc. So just wanted to put that on people's radar. If you need a spot start or you need a player who may be available and get some opportunities, Sterling Shepard could be that guy for you. Christian Watson has a confirmed mild high ankle sprain and is unlikely to be placed on IR. Same case with Jonathan Taylor. What, you want him to go on IR?
It's always something with Christian Watson. Just keep going, Jay. It's always
at least
something
it's not his
Christian
hamstring
Watson.
injury.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson is expected to increase his practice reps this week, but he's not going to start. It's already been.
Oh, no. You said Russ?
Russ, yeah. Russell Wilson not expected to increase his practice participation. He's not expected to play, but he's expected to increase his practice participation this week. But Fields has already been named the starter. Will Levis suffered a shoulder injury on Monday night. It's expected to be an AC joint sprain. The Titans are on bye in week 5, so he will have some time to rest, and he's already been named the starter, if healthy, by head coach Brian Callahan once they return in week 6. But again, that is assuming his health. If not, it will very likely be Mason Rudolph. Anthony Richardson, Ray, is considered day-to-day with abdominal and oblique strains, and that was a bit of a surprise to me because I thought he had a hip bone injury. Maybe they're related. Maybe they're not, but apparently he has a shot to play in week 5. Now, that doesn't sound overly encouraging, but hopefully he is available. The Browns have opened Nick Chubb's 21-day window to return to play, which means he has to be ready and on the active roster in the next 21 days or he's shut down for the season. We cannot say the same for Jonathan Brooks, though, in Carolina. Dave Canales has already said they will not open his 21-day window this week. That doesn't mean he won't play next week, but it does mean it's a little bit longer potentially for him to be active and playing. And then in other small news in Houston, Tank Dell and Joe Mixon are expected to be back this week. Definitely Tank Dell. That was already reported by a local Houston news station. But Joe Mixon as well is supposed to get in a full week of practice and play this week because they have the Bills race. So exciting game between Houston and Buffalo. Tank Dell and Joe Mixon expected to be back in that one.
Yeah, the Dolphins stink. I mean, the Dolphins are bad. And Marcus confirmed in the chat, there was confirmation in the chat that no hyperbole, not just a quarter, Jay. They have not led a single second of the 24 NFL season.
That's crazy.
A single second. Not a second round pick, not a second round rook, a single second, like one. 1,000, 2, 1,000. Dolphins, just, you can't play them. I know you've got Tyreek. Think about how bad is the first round of ADP this year.
Oof.
How bad has it been? Let's think about it. CMC. Womp, womp,
nope.
womp, right? No thank you.
Lamb.
CMC. It doesn't, it's not good. Who else do we got? CMC. Bijan. Jefferson is a hit.
Brees, and who's the other one? Who's the third running back?
Bijan, Brees, and
Christian.
Who? Oh, yeah, Christian. Yeah, so
they've all been terrible. Like, Brees has been okay.
Brees and Gibbs
Bijan hasn't been good, though.
Bijan has not been that great. Garrett Wilson, atrocious. Puka Nacua, flat out waste. A.J. Brown hadn't played since week 1. It was great in week 1, but he hadn't played. Who else? Marv?
Yeah, Marv was close, right? Marv was close. He's been all right, though.
Chase is limited
but
volume,
doing all right.
But he's... That if I could have switched my first round pick and underdog for like 2 seconds, give me a third and a fourth instead of that first round pick, I would have been
that Dynasty
swimming in the money. I talked about this on Bleacher Report yesterday, Jay, when I did my power ranking show. I have not felt or seen, or at least in recent memory, I can't recall a more wide open NFL season than we have right now. Literally every week, there's some new team rising from the ashes. It doesn't feel like there's one dominant squad right now. I put the Ravens at 4 in the power rankings, and they're 2-2. I put them at 4. They're 2-2, and I put them at 4. Every week you can't put Philly there. You can't have Dallas there. Cleveland's defense stinks. You got the it's just, I cannot recall a season where the parity has been this wide across the board. It's just, I have no clue who the favorite for the Super Bowl should be. I've got no clue. None.
Yeah.
Minnesota, I guess.
Because you don't believe in the Chiefs.
But you don't believe in
the Chiefs, right?
And people don't believe in Darnold, even though he's doing it. 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, leading the people still don't believe in it. So it's just and it makes for a very weird fantasy season. So let's talk right about it. The biggest news, biggest story, one of the biggest players and biggest attitudes in the league, very outspoken and talking about it. It's Davante Adams in the situation that's going on right now, Jay, out of Las Vegas. And we have talked about this all summer. The first episode of Receiver that dropped on Netflix, I was like, this ain't going to end well. We literally came on here and talked about it on Wake Up. Like, did you see Davante Adams on Receiver? Did you see him talking about this situation in the Raiders? He's not going to play. He's not going to finish the season in Las Vegas. So talk about it, Jay. What has transpired over the last 48 hours out of Las Vegas and with Davante Adams?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all starts with Antonio Pierce allegedly liking a post on Instagram about Davante Adams being traded. Shout out Elon Musk for removing public likes on Twitter. That's always good for us. But so it started with that, right? And then he goes on Kay Adams' show and he's asked about it, saying, hey, Davante, what's going on with this? Why? Have you heard anything about this? Have you talked to Coach? Has he said anything? And Davante's like, nope, haven't heard from Coach. Coach hasn't said anything to me. I don't know what's going on. They're obviously off on Mondays. You don't see them in the facility. Tuesdays, they may be in there doing some film, but he hasn't talked to Antonio Pierce since this happened. And then you find out yesterday, after he's been on Kay Adams' show, he's talked about how he hopes to hear from him. He's just trying to go in there, do his job. Davante Adams has requested a trade. Well, he didn't request a trade.
He hasn't requested it.
He preferred to be traded opposed to staying on the Raiders for this season. So not quite a trade request, but definitely a nudge in the trade direction. And then Adam Schefter reported that the Raiders have informed other teams they would consider trading wide receiver Davante Adams for a package that would include a second-round pick and additional compensation. Now, he's a Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Yes, he is.
He's a little older. He's got a massive contract and it would need to be restructured, but maybe they could find the pieces to get a trade done. Maybe a third and a fourth, but a second plus is very expensive for Davante Adams, and I don't think that's going to happen, but at least we have motion finally, Ray, as to Adams potentially being on another team. There's lots of teams that could probably use him. The question is who's going to go after him, and will the Raiders ultimately trade him? Because now Adams doesn't want to be there. And where do you think he potentially could end up as a potential trade destination with the Raiders?
Well, everybody is talking about the Jets, obviously, because of the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. I, for one, don't like it at all. The situation is already bad. It's a slow-paced offense. They grind the clock out. It is not a creative offense, and it's very jumbled as is right now. You go look at the three primary pass catchers from the Jets, from the wide receiver position, Wilson, Lazard, and Mike Williams. Go look at their usage score, ddfantasyfootball.com. None of them are being utilized in a way that's going to yield a significant fantasy point. So you're talking about adding Adams to the mix of Lazard, Wilson, Mike Williams, Tyler Conklin, and Breece Hall with a quarterback that's clearly not the same player he was back in 2021. He's 1 year removed from an Achilles tear. He doesn't look the same. He doesn't look bad. It looks better than what the Jets have had the past 3-4 years, but this is not 3 years ago Aaron Rodgers. It's just not the same. The situation isn't good. This is pure hopium. People are snorting that vintage 2021 grade hopium, not stepped on, not cut. It's pure, it's raw, it hits hard. I get it. You think about those things, you want to see, man, maybe just a little taste, just a little bump. No, you don't need none of that, man. You want to stay away from that vintage 2021 hopium. I'm good on the Jets situation. I'm not stop with Kansas City. They're not going to trade him to a division rival. It makes zero sense. Stop it. Get it out of your head. It's not happening. The Jets could very well be a real landing spot for him. I don't think the offense is creative. It's slow. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the type of player that he was 3 years ago. And Davante Adams isn't the same player he was 3 years ago. So this idea and this feeling that he's just going to go to the Jets and put up 25 fantasy points per game, you guys got to stop. Stop it. Stop. Talk to me, Jay. Am I crazy?
I wouldn't say you're crazy. So I did go and look to see what is the potential compensation, right? So the Jets do have some additional capital this season. They have the Lions' 3rd round pick, and they have the Chiefs' 6th round pick. So maybe there could be some additional compensation that they could throw that way if they did want to trade for Adams. So it's not horrible. But it's funny because when you talk about Adams and where he could go, it's the one place I still want to see him go more than anything, Ray. Let's just get a little Brandon Ayuk, Davante Adams swap. How about that, right? How do you think about that? The Raiders can take on old Brandon Ayuk, and the 49ers can take on a new wide receiver one and get Davante Adams. The contract structure is good. The team is ready. They're probably going to be Super Bowl bound, especially if they get Davante Adams. How do you feel about that situation? Because the good thing about that trade is that the contracts line up very, very well. You don't have to make a lot of legwork when it comes to the contract. They can just take Adams. They could even pay him what he wants next year. And then you have Ayuk. He goes to Las Vegas. He can get all his targets. He's got player-friendly coach, for at least for now, Antonio Pierce. And then the 49ers get rid of that contract and the player that doesn't seem to be overly involved in their offense.
They just paid Ayuk. I just don't think we've ever seen.
But they did it reluctantly, though. They didn't want to pay Ayuk.
I, too, was thinking the whole time, I bet you if they can get a refund, the 90 days on your receipt, you got 90 days. I got to go to Dick's Sporting Goods today to take some Crocs back. Right? Getting close to that 90-day point, Jay. They probably wish they can get a refund on that. And I don't know. I think that'd be a great fit for Adams. I think he would fit well in that Shanahan scheme and that offense with Brock Purdy, with what Purdy wants to do well. I think he'd be a little problematic for my Raiders. I don't know if I would like that. And I see my girl Joe in the chat. She says she ain't stopping. Adams to the Jets. We want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm sorry. I do not want to see it, Jay. But here's my thing. I've been thinking about the situation a bit. And this tension and shift between Adams and Pierce, I can totally see it happening. Antonio Pierce is a former player, played linebacker, one of the most rugged positions back when the game was a little more physical. So I can already feel the dynamic in that locker room. If Pierce doesn't think Adams is giving it his all, you're supposed to be this elite Hall of Fame player. I've been in the trenches, boy. I can just see that there is just, and he's got the clout to say it. He's got the clout in a way that Mike McDaniel probably can't talk to him. And I think that goes both ways. There could be good and bad from that, because you look at DeMeco Ryans and he probably garners that same level of respect. I believe DeMeco made a few Pro Bowls during his career, but I can definitely see if Antonio Pierce, as a former NFL linebacker who played at a very good level, Antonio Pierce was a very good linebacker during his time. He wasn't Ray Lewis. He wasn't one of the greats, but he was a damn good Mike linebacker. I could see how Adams's lack of enthusiasm could rub him the wrong way and cause that friction. I can definitely see how that is a very toxic situation in the background, just knowing the type of player that he was, the respect and the credit that you already get from having played the game, and then feeling like somebody's cheating the game or not giving it at all. I could see how this could be very bad.
We have another update, Ray, from Diana Rossini. Per our text chat, Brandon just sent us, the Jets and Cowboys are among many teams monitoring the Davante Adams situation. Both have checked in with the Raiders. I'm told at this point that Vegas says there's no rush to make a move until the team reaches their asking price, but Adams wants out ASAP. So once again, confirming that Davante Adams wants out.
Of course.
And the Cowboys desperately need a wide receiver 2 next to CeeDee Lamb. But the question, Ray, is obviously one, the asking price, and two is the contract. And then Scott's saying the Browns is another team that potentially could be interested as well.
Dallas doesn't need to give him no second. No Micah Parsons, he's going to be out. High ankle sprain. Tank Lawrence is going on IR. So the defense is already decimated. They have no running game. They're not a good football team. Do not spend a second-round pick on a wide receiver when you could probably use that to upgrade the receiver position with a 20-year-old next year, not a 31-year-old receiver. I'm sure they will do it because in their minds, we're still a Super Bowl contending team. I would not do that if I were Dallas. I would let another team take on Adams' contract. I'd let another team pay a second plus. If I were the Dallas Cowboys, I wouldn't do it. And I stand on business. I do not think that the situation is going to be great in New York for the whole thing. I just don't think it's a good situation, a good offensive environment.
So you know what's crazy, right? So I was just looking up their picks, right? They have 4 comp picks, 3 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th. But per this mock draft on Tankathon, the Cowboys are projected to get Ashton Genty at 14 and Trey Harris at 45. And I know you'd be absolutely losing your mind on draft if they got both those players.
Boy, tune in for we got the best draft stream on the internet. Tune in for that. If Dallas gets Genty and Trey Harris, we're not going to talk. It's too early to talk about what's going to happen.
That would be insane.
It's too early to talk about what's going to happen. So just, what do you think? How does this play out? Raiders are in no rush. The Jets are going to do it, right? The Jets feel like it's do or die.
The Jets could absolutely do it.
The Jets are going to do it. They're do or die. They feel like they're still in the hunt. They can make a Super Bowl run, which they can't, but they're going to be the team to do it. Trade for Adams. Aaron Rodgers is going to look washed next year, and it's just going to go down. The Jets are about to screw this up. They're about to do it. They're about to do it, and I do not think that the addition of Davante Adams turns them into a contending team in the AFC. So that's my opinion, and that's my thoughts on the situation. I do want to talk about CMC. Time to talk about Christian and his not one, but now 2 Achilles tendons are flaring up and problematic. Where did this come from? And apparently this has been the case the entire time. So why have we not known it?
I don't know. That's a great question, right? NBC Sports, Bay Area's Matt Mayako. Oh my God, I said that so wrong. I'm sorry, Matt. Reports Christian McCaffrey has Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs. So obviously he flew to Germany to get this magical Achilles tendonitis repair surgery. Supposed to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe you should have, but I mean, it'd be pretty expensive considering your flying tendencies plus the surgery itself. So I would not recommend, but maybe it'll work out. So Christian McCaffrey has Achilles tendonitis. Obviously, this is great for Jordan Mason, but I mean, it's hard to imagine him coming back this season, even though they say he's gonna early November. So they say, but in both Achilles, Ray, in your opinion, what does this mean for his long-term health, right? Like at this point, it feels like if you have Achilles tendonitis in both your ankles, how many years you got left? 1, maybe 2. Could this be a problem long term? You'd feel like it would have to be. It's not looking good right now for Christian McCaffrey, and especially if you're paying for him, trading for him, it doesn't sound like this is going to go away. 1, and 2, what this could mean for him potentially looking towards early retirement and things of that nature for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and I see people saying the team knew, so it doesn't mean much. Well, your ass didn't know, so it means a lot. The team knew, you didn't know, so now we know. Like, what do you, I don't know. I know there's somebody in the chat, Smidshot. He also tore his Achilles tendon. We both were torn Achilles brothers recovering. I think I recovered a little earlier than he did. I don't really even know what it means. I don't know if tendonitis means there are small tears in the Achilles that aren't really, the big tears, but I don't know what it means. I'd rather my 29-year-old running back not have issues with both of his ankles at 29. I see people talking about buy low on Christian McCaffrey.
Early.
Why?
That's a good point.
Why? There's at some point in time, like things just end. It just does. And Chris McCaffrey's been the best, has been great. One of the best fantasy running backs we've ever seen, that we might ever see. And he did his job. But at some point, it will end. At some point, he will not play. He will be done. He will be gone. And maybe if there weren't a flashing red light to not buy low, maybe it would be 2 Achilles tendons issues. All right, let's just think about it for a second. 29-year-old running back, not a huge guy, was dealing with injuries last year. He's got 2 Achilles tendon issues this year, and you want to go pay for it. Why? He's not even playing. He's not scoring you any points. Like, just use some common sense. Like, what are we doing? Why? Tell me why.
It's just the hope, right? It's the hope of what he could be. And I think the part that people aren't really like talking about and bringing up is just how good Jordan Mason is. Like, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, why the hell are you even thinking of playing Christian McCaffrey?
He's got the second most rushing yards in 49ers football history, only behind Christian McCaffrey from last year, and it's by like 20 yards. No, He is not CMC in the receiving game. Not even close. But who is? Nobody. The best receiving running back in NFL history. He's not that. He's not going to do that. So you know what that means? What you think about what we're seeing play out with the 49ers pass catchers. Because those targets aren't being funneled to Christian McCaffrey 7-8 times a game, there are more opportunities for a Juwan Jennings, for a George Kittle, for a Deebo Samuel, for a Brandon Ayuk. As bad as he's been, in air quotes, he's still within the threshold of you're going to play him. He is still being utilized. And if you watch the game and you're not box score scouting, you'll know that he isn't just an absent piece of the offense. He's still being used. They've missed on some plays. He's dropped some balls. But because Mason isn't Christian McCaffrey, it's affording more players in that offense to produce, and we're seeing that play out. I don't know why people are in the – I'm not chasing CMC from 2018, 2019, 2020. I appreciate all them points, but I don't think that that's going to be – he's going to repeat that again. Not at this stage of his career, and that's not to take away from who he is and what he is, which is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But the hell to the no, I'm not buying low on Christian McCaffrey today when we're not going to get any points. There's no clarity on the injury issue. And what I do know is he's an older running back, and oftentimes the decline starts. So I'm good on buying low on CMC. I appreciate the points, but I'm moving on.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think if you have him, though, I'd consider holding him because you know that there is a lot of upside there if he's healthy.
Sure.
But yeah, buying for I mean, anything but a third. If you're buying for a third for some reason, then sure. But even a second round pick is a little expensive for me, and I don't think anyone would trade him away for a second round pick because you know the upside he possesses on a weekly basis. But I do think there's a world where him and Jordan Mason kind of just split work because there's no reason to put Christian McCaffrey's more work on Christian McCaffrey's shoulders, knowing he's dealing with this injury, and you need him more for the playoffs. If he can be a receiving back more so in this offense and not have to do as much between the tackles, then yeah, the 49ers should totally do that, because the good thing about having Jordan Mason playing so well is he's confident he can deliver for you now. It's not just him that he's the backup and Christian McCaffrey is the starter, and if Christian gets hurt, all of a sudden Jordan Mason has to figure it out. He's figured it out, he's playing well, and the 49ers believe in him, so bringing Christian McCaffrey it's just a huge bonus. You have this massive receiving threat and another guy who can break big plays out of the backfield, but you don't need to put a ton of work on his shoulders to be great. And while they've struggled early this season, I think having a split backfield for them going forward would be massive for their upside as a team.
Well, Jordan, I would put money on this, that Jordan Mason won't come off the field. I don't think he's going to be relegated to 0 carries a game, 2 attempts. He's a part of the offense. He's a part of the offense. If not for Jordan Mason and Brock Purdy, the 49ers wouldn't be where they are, and which is competing and still in a mix to be in the mix at the end. So it's just interesting to sort of watch this story unfold from the summer until now. And what I'll just say moving forward in football, man, if a player isn't practicing or playing in training camp in the moments where everybody's kind of doing things, there's a reason. It's not, they're not just sitting out training camp practices and OTAs because they're too good to get out there and work with their team. There's probably a reason. In this situation, I think we'll look back on it and be like, man, maybe there were a couple of caution flags. I'm not going to say there was the smoking gun, but maybe there were a couple of caution flags just to say, you know what? I'm not going to slam CMC one-on-one every single time. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Give me a CeeDee Lamb. Give me a Tyreek, which ain't working out, but maybe there were some signals that just should have alerted us, and we'll look back at all of that at the end of the season and sort of talk about it when we figure out, does CMC even do anything for us or not. Kansas City, they've got a problem, or maybe not. And maybe not. If I said Kansas City has a problem, Jay Rich, you would immediately think it would be the wide receiver position that I'm talking about with Rashee Rice's knee. But is the real problem Patrick Mahomes? There's a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of stuff. And I'm going to give our guys, the Dynasty Theory crew, credit because they dropped the video a week ago. They said it's time to move on. People thought they were oh, no, you're insane. It's Patty Mahomes. It's Mr. 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. Look at what he did with Tyreek Hill. People called him crazy. Very next week, I see every goddamn analyst across fantasy football. It's time to sell Patrick Mahomes. Jay Rich, his depth of target has decreased the past 6 years. It's just going down and down and down. Right now, where he's throwing the ball, one of the worst in the NFL right now. Not pushing the ball downfield. Rashee Rice, I don't know what's going on. If he's got an ACL, if he doesn't have an ACL tear, none of us know anything. This Kansas City Chiefs situation, from a fantasy perspective, no Pacheco, no Rice, no Hollywood Brown. You got Kareem Hunt and Carson. What the hell? What do we make of this situation? Let's start with Rashee Rice. This can't end well, right? If they try to put him out there in a couple of weeks, just a bone bruise, they're probably like, look, he's about to be suspended next year. We need to get something out of him this year. Can we shoot you up, Rashee, and you get out there and play for us? Because we know you ain't going to be here next year. What do you do with the receivers? Any interest in Juju? Any interest in Juju? Because I don't think they're trading for, I don't think it's going to be freaking Adams that they bring in. I don't think they're trading for no damn Davante Adams. It's probably going to be what's on the roster to some degree. We'll talk about Diontae Johnson in a minute, but just Rashee Rice, his ACL, injury or non-ACL, how are you feeling today?
I guess I feel a little encouraged. Like, if you have Rashee Rice, maybe the outlook isn't as bad as it could have been. It could have been ACL, MCL, PCL when you really think about it, because that injury looked so bad. It didn't really see an extent to where it was going to be just the ACL. And now there's reports that the knee is still pretty swollen. They haven't confirmed the ACL, so they have to, do some more testing. It's going to happen apparently late this week, early next week. So we should hear some reports as to what his injury potentially could be. He's going to be out an extended period of time. The question is really just, what is the injury and how long? I think if you're the Chiefs, though, right now you're like, man, can he play in the playoffs? Like, can he come back for January? Because outside of that, I don't see a reason why they should care about having him ready to play, because much like CMC, you don't need him for the regular season. It's very clear whether we like it or not, they're probably going to win 10 to 12 games. Maybe they don't get the number 1 seed in the end, but they're 4-0 and their games are ugly, but Mahomes is getting it done every single week. And so if you're Rashee Rice and you're the Chiefs, if he can just rest until January, and heaven forbid you get the bye too, so he gets the extra week, then you're good to go. You brought up Juju Smith-Schuster. When he was in Kansas City, Ray, he had 101 targets, 900 yards, and 3 touchdowns, averaging 12 yards per reception. And for people who don't know, this was the guy who wasn't going to replace Tyreek Hill, but was the original slot option before they drafted Rashee Rice. They drafted Rashee Rice to replace Juju Smith-Schuster when he moved on to New England. And they, more importantly, they didn't want to pay him for his production. They brought in Rashee Rice. He was great. Now he's hurt. They got Juju back from New England after he was released, and I think that Juju will slot right into that role. For fantasy purposes, I don't know, but I think it's good for Mahomes, because the biggest thing with Mahomes is the familiarity with the offense and the continuity. It's not going to come right away, but Juju, much like Mecole Hardman and Justin Watson and all these guys who've been in the offense before, understand what they're trying to do. It's the reason why Kareem Hunt can come in and play for this team this coming week, which he's going to do. It makes a massive difference for Kansas City when they have all these different formations and trick plays and motions, making sure that you understand what needs to be done. There'll be a few wrinkles they made for Rashee Rice, but for the most part, I think Juju will slot into 70, 80% of that role. It's not going to be Sky Moore. It'll be Juju, because he knows how to play it very, very well. I have some interest, but I think it's more about Mahomes. And honestly, Ray, I think he'll be fine. Like, I know that people are selling him like crazy. He's QB5 right now on KTC. He's, you talk about his yards per attempt. It's actually up from last season from 7 yards an attempt up to 7.5. And that, is partially due to Xavier Worthy. It's just, for whatever reason, this team hasn't quite got going. But I think people need to remember, like, there could be a moment where it's like, oh shit, the Chiefs have figured it out. How to use Xavier Worthy. Travis Kelce gets going. Maybe Juju does enough in this offense where he's pretty good. Justin Watson gets involved. Noah Gray. And heaven forbid, Kareem Hunt looks good. Oh my God, you got yourself an offense once again, because we've always talked about how they've been trying to find the replacement to Kareem Hunt for years. Well, now Kareem Hunt is back, and maybe this offense will flourish once again.
Yeah, his average depth of target is second to bottom, only next to Baker Mayfield, 5.6 average depth of target, 5.6.
And Baker Mayfield
minus
is
three versus the sticks, which is versus the sticks, -3, which is bottom 6 in the NFL. So he's not I don't care. He's not pushing the ball downfield. Like he's not pushing the ball downfield, and maybe he will. I think he's a great. There's no thinking about it. He's a great Hall of Fame NFL quarterback, but right now for fantasy football,
I think you've seen him throw touchdowns,
just
man.
Gut feel. Don't look at any. We know there's some, but just where should he probably be ranked on a week-to-week basis? Not a top 5 option. He should not be considered a top 5 option week to week. What range do you think he falls in? Like 10 to 15 on a weekly basis? 8 to 12?
I'd have him in 8 to 10 probably.
8 to 10? Okay. 8 to 10 range.
Just because he's a player who can throw for 3 touchdowns every week, and we can't say that about
that's why I was
25 quarterbacks in the league. It's like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and then the Russian quarterbacks who have that high upside.
We keep
but
saying he
Mahomes
can throw for 3 a week. When's the last time he's done it?
It's probably been a while.
I don't know,
he can.
But it doesn't feel like it's as frequent as we continue to talk about. He could do it. It seems like we say that a lot more than the actual production of him hitting that 3 touchdown game ceiling. It seems like we talk about it more than it happens. I don't know, but I do know that the panic out there on Patrick Mahomes is real. And again, our crew, the Dynasty Theory crew, they were on top of that joint last week. This was from last week. Time to sell. They were talking about Patrick Mahomes and Dynasty and what you should be doing. And they were back this week talking about Rashee Rice. Is it maybe a potential opportunity to buy Rashee Rice with the injury with the injury news and sort of the uncertainty. So make sure you tap in to them on the channel. And there's some also, Jay Scott Connor put out a really dope piece about Eric All. So just his exposure, talking about Eric All, what to do with him. So if you're into this kind of stuff, which I highly, highly encourage you to do from a dynasty perspective, check out both of these pieces that are living right now on the channel. We still got some more to get to. I want to talk about Diontae Johnson. We got to get to Nico Collins versus the world, and Dontavian Wicks season may be upon us, Jay. Y'all run it up for us. Hit that like button, and we'll be right back after the break. Appreciate y'all tapping in to Wake Up with Ray and Jay show. If you're new, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like the content, subscribe, engage with the chat. Check out all the dope content on the YouTube channel and the podcast feed, ddfantasyfootball.com. You can get in, use the opportunity Trinity tracker, the best usage tool in the game. We're constantly making updates, and I got another round of updates we're going to push through to the tool probably in the next couple of weeks that I think people will really, really enjoy. But speaking of usage and opportunity, we've seen a drastic shift in the usage of Panthers wide receivers. We saw Diontae Johnson get it going back-to-back weeks. Xavier Legette, the rookie out of South Carolina, got it going this past week. And now there are reports with the potential injury news of Rashee Rice that Diontae Johnson and I believe Adam Thielen could both potentially be on the move. And smart for Carolina. Smart for Carolina. I think Adam Schefter slipped up and said that Diontae was going to be one and done in Carolina anyway on a show. So maybe the Panthers could look at this as a way to, we screwed up that Bryce Young deal, but let's try to recoup some value and try to get a little something back off the top. So talk about Diontae Johnson potentially being on the move. You like Diontae Johnson a lot. Original OG Diontae Johnson truther. How you feeling about Diontae, and do you think he would make sense in Kansas City, which seems like more of a realistic thing than Davante Adams? The thing that we don't talk about out of Kansas City enough is how big of an injury Hollywood Brown was. He was going to be a big part of this offense, and had Hollywood Brown been there at the start of the season, I don't believe Rashee Rice is as good as he was to start the year, but that is a big loss from Kansas City. So do you think a player like Diontae Johnson could realistically be on the move to KC?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to the cost, right? If you're Carolina, what are you looking for in exchange for Diontae Johnson? Is it a 4th-round pick? Is it a 5th-round pick? And that's where, when you look at this situation, he's on an expiring contract. So that automatically makes the cost much lower than it would be otherwise. You're looking at a day 3 compensation, maybe even late day 3 potentially. And if you're the Panthers, you're just trying to recoup something for a player that I believe they traded a 3rd-round pick for. I forget what the compensation was they traded, but I believe they traded a lot to get him.
Yeah, I think it was
Feel free to vet that for me, but he's
check.
a player who, once again, can play outside, can play inside. And while I feel like we've been talking about this forever, Ray, when Tyreek Hill had his last season in Kansas City, it wasn't the deep routes that made him so good. It was the short, intermediate, first down routes that made him great for fantasy and made him great in that offense. And that's where Diontae Johnson can be so effective. If you need him to play in the slot, he can obviously do that. If you need him to play outside with some inside-out type stuff, he can do that. What was it? What was the compensation?
The Steelers are giving the Panthers a 7th-round pick in addition to the wide receiver and receiving a 6th-round pick with the cornerback. So they sent Diontae Jackson in a 6th for Diontae Johnson.
Okay, so they just gave him away then. So then at that point, the Panthers could get anything for him. 6th-round pick, 5th-round pick.
Clearly.
Hey, that's where you look at the Adams situation. The honest situation is like, what? Okay, the Panthers are terrible. They're not bringing him back because they want to roll with Bryce Young, or maybe they don't, and they get another quarterback. But it's clear that if you're Diontae, 1, you want to be paid, and 2, you want to be in a better situation. So if you can trade him away to a team like the Chiefs, he'd be obviously more than happy to do that. And the compensation coming back to you could be very minimal because your cost of acquisition was very low. So I think that's where you look at Diontae. it's a very real situation that he could be back on a lot of different teams. There could be other options for him beyond Kansas City, as Kansas City is the immediate need, and I think he'd fit in there great because, again, he's a player much like Rashee Rice, can operate inside or outside. The problem is, when you talk about bringing him in, how quickly can he acclimate to the offense? How quickly can he learn it? And is this more of a regular season play that we should be happy for fantasy, or is it more of a playoffs play where he slowly works into the offense, and by the time the playoffs come, he's ready to go?
So let's just go, whether he gets traded or not, the situation in Carolina looks really good. And I talked about this on Twitter. I posted some stuff, and I was like, if you're looking at our Trinity tracker and looking at the usage for the wide receivers, there's no clear just use case example, check this out, of a situational change and an offensive environment getting better for pass catchers. So I'm just going to show you weeks 1 and 2, the Carolina Panthers. These are we don't even need to hover over the dots. This is how dope the visualization of seeing usage and how usage equates to fantasy points can truly change the way that you think about teams, think about players, and think about decisions, whether to buy, sell, start, or sit. This is weeks 1 and 2. Bryce Young. Doesn't matter the dots. What was happening, Jay? You know Bryce Young wasn't very good, couldn't throw over the middle of the field. You didn't want to start any Panthers, and you start looking at just the range of use, right? Don't worry about the names. You could hover over them and see who they are. Okay, that's Tommy Tremble was leading the way in usage. Like right there, it's just bad. Adam Thielen scoring you 6 points, not being used. There's Diontae Johnson. So that's weeks 1 and 2. Change your offensive environment. Change the quarterback. And now that chart goes from looking disgusting to, oh shit, I want all these guys. Who is this? I want him. Well, God, surprise, surprise, Diontae Johnson, averaging 4 points per game over the past 2 weeks with Andy Dalton. Who's this? I'm interested in this. Oh, Adam Thielen. It was the one game, but he scored the touchdown. He got used. And the player that I want to talk about right now is this rookie right here, Xavier Legette. Over the past 2 weeks, you're seeing the usage increase and the fantasy points are following. This is a player that we both really liked, Xavier Legette, out of South Carolina, and we saw him really get involved in the offense this week. So whether Diontae Johnson gets traded or not, where are you at with this pass catcher amongst a rookie class that right now all the hype, all the energy, all the eyes and ears are on Marvin Neighbors? But is there a sneaky play down here to get you somebody who can be a dope fantasy asset later down the line and potentially dynasty asset heading into year 2 by going ahead and buying early on Xavier Legette? What are your thoughts? And I see Jimbo and Joe. We got to get the Jimbo and Joe crew. They go crazy every damn stream. They're talking about Big John Mingo. We ain't talking about John Mingo today. Jimbo and Joe, relax. No John Mingo today. Jay, talk about Xavier Legette.
He's one that's really tough for me because when you look at the short term, redraft especially, it looks very good. I don't know when Bryce Young's going to play next. I don't know if it's going to be this season. But this is the problem, right? We talk about buying Xavier Legette. If there's a world where, one, Dave Canales isn't fired, which the way they're playing right now, I'd say he's looking pretty good. First couple of weeks, it was shaky. Benches Bryce Young, all of a sudden.
Himself.
Yeah,
he made that quick pivot.
Literally. Yeah, he saved him. He literally saved his own job by benching Bryce Young to be able to say to the front office, to the owner, it's not a me issue. It's a him issue.
Yep.
Now his job is to fix the quarterback. And that's part of the reason he was hired. And that's definitely valid. But when you talk about Legette this season, depending on what happened with Bryce Young, and I'm going to, assume he's not going to play much, if at all, this season. That's my assumption. Xavier Legette should be very good, especially if Diontae Johnson gets traded. And we know that Adam Thielen is at least out for the next 3 weeks, potentially more than that with his injury. So Legette should once again see a ton of targets. 10 targets this week, 6 receptions, 66 yards, and the touchdown. The problem for Dynasty, though, Ray, is now his value is going up. Now his price is going up. His stock is going up. So if you're trading for him, what's going to happen when they turn to Bryce Young next season? His value should go right back to where it was, in the shitter. Because even without Diontae Johnson there, and it's looking like he's probably not going to be, I just don't know if I trust Bryce Young to support a wide receiver 1, period.
But there's no Bryce Young ain't there right now. It does.
I'm saying for Dynasty, right? So next season, he could be the starter again.
Bryce Young ain't going to be the quarterback next year.
we can hope. But I think that's my personal conundrum.
I can guarantee
that's
you
my personal conundrum.
I will put it on wax. I'll guarantee he's not the quarterback next year. Absent Andy Dalton get hurt week 5 and Bryce Young coming out and making the Pro Bowl, which there's probably a 0% chance of that happening, he will not be the quarterback in Carolina next year. There's no way Dave Canales, if he survives this season and has a high draft pick, that he's going to risk his probably only shot at a head coaching career on a child-size NFL quarterback. There's only enough room for one child quarterback in the NFL, and that resides in Arizona. Kyler Murray is the only baby that can play in the NFL. Bryce Young, I love the kid. He's a great kid. First one in, last one out. You know what that gets you? 0 fucking fantasy points. Excuse my language. Jay, talk about another young. Go ahead. Go. You're trying to be diplomatic here, and the reality is.
I just don't think you should be that sure. No, that's all I'm saying. I don't think you should be that sure.
I'm very sure.
Look, I don't want him to start. I'm with you.
Joe and Jimbo.
Carolina always makes the wrong decisions. They consistently do. That's the problem.
Did you see that story about Cam Newton was talking about Jimmy Clausen told him that he needed $1 million for the number 2 coming out of Auburn? Yeah. Cam Newton said he wanted 2. He didn't want number 1. He wanted number 2. And Jimmy Clausen was like, I need to get $1 million. I need $1 million for me to get off this number 2. And Cam was like, man,
hilarious.
Get out of here with that. Cam's telling the story. And then he said Jimmy called back and was like, all right, well, I'll talk to my people and we'll do it for $750. And Cam said he hung up the phone, called the equipment manager and said, give me number 1. And I'm going to make sure this is the last time people have ever even heard of Jimmy Clausen. So just interesting story about Carolina. They never make the right damn moves. But let's talk about another young player who it's finally happening. Jay, it's finally happening, and we needed the injury, and it's working out pretty well, and I think he's going to be good for us in fantasy. He's not going to be the one on the team, which that was never going to be the case, which I told you that. Go check out the Trinity video on the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room prior to the season starting. But Dontavian Wicks is here, and he is playing well. Wicks, the touchdown maker, doesn't get a ton of opportunity, but every time the ball gets thrown in his direction, he seems to find a way to make a play. You got to see him up close and personal a couple of years ago in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and you were very impressed. I was very impressed. And right now he is starting to, at least in week 4, he got the usage, he got the opportunity on his team, and he produced at a very high level, giving us 24 fantasy points, right in line with Jaden Reed. And we know the game script was kind of wonky. They were down. Had to just chunk the ball 55 times, I believe. But I think one of the good things coming out of Jordan Love throwing the ball so much is when a team like the Vikings, who are second in the NFL in blitz rate, they're blitzing over 40% of the time. They've got one of the best run defenses in the NFL, one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL. Not as good in the passing department, but when you see he only took 1 sack in that game and was able to just sling the ball all over the field, this should be good for Wicks, for Kraft, for Dobbs in spot opportunities, for Reed. How you feeling about Dontavian Wicks now, baby?
I feel okay about him. I think that he's going to get his opportunity.
On the happy parade today. Goodness.
Look, and I love Dontavian. I love Dontavian Wicks. I think he's a phenomenal talent, but it's hard to ignore the fact that this dude's been dropping passes left and right all season. He only caught 5 receptions on 13 targets, which 13 targets is great. But Jordan Love had to throw the ball like 54 times in that game. They were down a ton. Jordan Love likes to chuck it up. It's the reason why you like Jordan Love in fantasy and why you wanted to draft him. But this isn't going to be the game script every single week. And so it's kind of like a perfect storm of great for Dontavian Wicks, but bad in terms of his value, because everyone would be like, oh, this is why Jordan Love is a top 5 quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, because he can throw the ball all over the yard. He's a great quarterback. He's throwing for a ton of touchdowns. But, like, this is not going to be the norm. We've seen the way this team has played, and it's been in the absence of a passing game, and they've still been getting it done, still been playing very, very well. And especially with Jordan Love, I don't think they want to drop back and pass it 50 times a game. LaFleur does not want that to happen because they did lose this game. It wasn't very good for them. And so you talk about Josh Jacobs. He could have been utilized more in that game if they were in it, because he was running the ball very effectively. I believe he was over 5 yards a carry in that game. He had like 50 yards on 9 carries or something like that. Something ridiculous. And they still, of course, were out of it, had to throw the ball. I think that Wicks is great in terms of his touchdown upside. We know that Jaden Reed's going to score. Romeo Doubs seems to be a little bit out of favor relative to Wicks. And much like Brian Thomas, Dontavian Wicks seems to be the guy down the field getting the targets, which we saw even last season when he did get opportunities.
Yes,
it was always down the field. And so when you talk about starting him, though, if he's going to be third on the pecking order, and I think the real story out of Green Bay is actually Tucker Kraft. Because if you're not on Tucker Kraft right now, you are completely out of touch. I believe it's now back-to-back weeks. He's had like 50 yards and 6+ receptions. He is absolutely supplanted Luke Musgrave, and he's playing at a phenomenal level. You talk about tight ends that should be in the top 10 every single week. Tucker Kraft is that guy. Dontavian Wicks is a player who's going to be boom or bust, probably a wide receiver 3 at best most weeks, and you're not going to want to rank him there because you look at his game log, 3 targets, no yards. 4 targets, 26 yards on 3 receptions, 2 targets, no yards. Now 2 of those games were with Malik Willis. And then this week, 13 targets, 5 receptions, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he's got a bunch of drops already this year. He should have had 3 touchdowns in this game. So that's where, for me, is Wicks is going to be a little bit frustrating to start weekly. But in best ball, he's great. And I think he's probably going to be third in terms of wide receiver targets. But I think Kraft is the real story with Christian Watson out. He will probably be the second target in this offense going forward.
All right. Really quickly, let's revisit this and we'll get ready to wrap this thing up. I want to go back to this. We had a little bit of a disagreement on Monday. And I went and looked and I thought about it and I read some comments, and I want to revisit this Nico Collins versus the world conversation. Nico Collins versus neighbors. Nico Collins versus Jamar Chase. Jay, outside of the name, if you're just talking about you want to plug somebody in a lineup and you feel good about it every single week despite the outcome, I don't know how many receivers right now in the NFL you would honestly, truthfully, I'm talking about right now. We're not talking 5 years, 10 years from now. Right now, how many receivers in the NFL I would prioritize over Nico Collins? I don't know if there are any, honestly. Maybe CeeDee Lamb, but it wouldn't be
CeeDee's
Jefferson.
The one we didn't talk
and
about,
Jefferson
yeah.
is dope. But he's not being targeted at the frequency in which Nico Collins is. He's scoring. He scored a touchdown every game this season. But you're just talking about this year. Is he the wide receiver 1 right now through the remainder of the season? Why
the
not?
Wide receiver 1? I don't hate it. Like I've talked about this last show. Like, his upside is ridiculous. He's leading the league in yards by over 100 yards over neighbors. You know, he's targeted down the field. He has a phenomenal quarterback. He's in a great scheme. And Ray, the one thing that I think people don't really talk about that much with this team is, like, they're not even playing that well. Like, Bobby Slowick has struggled to get Stroud going this year.
They're not.
And they play in an easy division, which, again, you saw it this week. They can smack up the Jaguars and have a great game. Like, I think there's just so much upside with Collins. And part of it is, Tank Dell is out. And part of it is there's only Stephon Diggs, no running game. But he's just a great player.
Yeah. And maybe it's the fact that they have no running game right now, so they're forced to throw the ball a little bit more. But he's a physically imposing receiver. He's a very good route runner. He's running the type of routes that score fantasy points. It's not short shit. Deep digs, deep crossers, out routes, seam routes. He's doing those hog routes that I talk about. Hitch, out, and go. That's what you want to see receivers doing. And he's got an elite quarterback with a great offensive scheme. I mean, Hector, I think he is top 5 in Dynasty. He's 25 years old. But just for right now, in this week-to-week game that we play, I don't really care about this long-term Dynasty value because it shifts like the wind. It really does shift and change like the wind. Nico is that dude. Garrison said I'd still take Lamb over Nico because of the lack of competition. And that's sort of that's the conundrum, right? You go consolidated targets in Dallas. There's probably only one guy outside of Ferg getting the ball. But that offensive environment in Houston does seem to be a little bit better. But from a passing standpoint, volume, production, I think he's right up there with the top. And then the final thing that we're just going to talk about, you got a little nugget down here, Jay. Hit the music. Somebody said there was a super chat. I don't see a super chat. Jeff, I don't see a super chat. Jeff, hit me with your comment, whatever it was. I don't have one. Hit the music, Jay. Hit the music.
Can you not hear it?
I can hear it now. This Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. Talk about this, Jay, as we get out of here. Talk about Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. What is this that you have here?
It's definitely interesting, right? So this is just something that CBS brought up. It's, everyone wants to talk about Brock Purdy and how bad not necessarily the quarterback you want to pay, and he's not that guy, and he needs Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. But since the start of last season, Brock Purdy is 14-6. Patrick Mahomes is 14-6. Okay. Brock Purdy has 5,400 passing yards. Patrick Mahomes has 5,000. Brock Purdy has 36 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. Patrick Mahomes has 33 touchdowns to 19 interceptions. Pass rating for Brock Purdy is 111. Patrick Mahomes 92. Yards per attempt, surprise, surprise. Brock Purdy 9.6. Patrick Mahomes 7.1. Is he better than Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. But the stats say that in that offense, he is playing at a level that is higher than Patrick Mahomes.
It's the data. Those are the numbers. Since the start of last season, he's been pretty good. That Purdy guy and that Mahomes guy is great on the field. I just don't think that he's a locked and loaded must-start weekly quarterback. I definitely think the matchups, and it ain't his fault. When you're throwing to Justin Watson and you're throwing to Sky Moore and having to throw to Noah Gray, it just limits your upside. It's the reality of the situation. That's all it is, man. That's all it is. All right. Jeff says, here's this question, Jay. We don't do this a lot, but he wants to know, Tyreek Hill, Tank Bigsby in a third, or Garrett Wilson? Compete now.
Tank in the third.
Is PPR Dynasty win now.
Tyreek Tank in the third.
Yeah.
Easily.
Easily.
Tank can outproduce Garrett Wilson by himself, and you get Tyreek too.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good, Jeff. Don't worry about it, baby. Appreciate everybody tapping in. Thank y'all for joining us this Wednesday. Make sure you pull up this Friday for our Friday show. We will have rankings. There's some other cool stuff dropping from me very soon that y'all see hit the timeline very quickly. And remember, no wake up next week. I will be out. My son's 5th birthday was yesterday, so shout out to my little man, Ridge Garvin, man. My little dog, man, turned 5 yesterday. Very excited. We're taking him to Disney World, so we'll be out next week, but I will be back the following week, and I shouldn't be out anymore throughout the rest of the season. We appreciate each and every eye, each and every ear. Like I said, hit that thumbs up button, like the content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon. Trinity report coming on tomorrow. Y'all will really like this one. We out of this thing. See you on Friday. Peace.